and welcome to CX Today. My name is Shelly, and today I'm delighted to be joined by 4 excellent customer experience analysts to run through all the latest news from the space. Yesterday, I'm delighted to be joined by Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, Rebecca Wetteman, CEO and Principal Analyst at Valoir, Shelly Kramer, President and CEO at Kramer and Company, and Finbarr Begley, Senior Research Analyst at Cavell. It's great to have you all join me, and let's get right on into the news. And let's start with the launch of Agentforce 3, featuring a new command center. Now, this is big news, although there seems to be lots of Agentforce announcement every week at the moment. But I don't know, Rebecca, if you maybe want to start by sharing your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Charlie, the Agentforce announcements are coming fast and furious. It's important to note that this one is not a 3.0, but a 3. What I will say in all seriousness is there's a lot here around governance, management, and observability, the sort of things that we've talked about that we really need to bring Agentforce beyond this sort of initial pilot. This is interesting phase to how do I manage and scale this at an enterprise level. So very important steps that Salesforce is taking, particularly when we look at what some competitors are doing around talking about where's the platform where you orchestrate and manage all these agents. I need these governance, observability, monitoring, and control pieces to be able to not just understanding what agents are doing in the moment, but be able to look at how do I optimize them over time.
It is a bit like finally bringing the hall monitor into school. I think that when we think about Agentforce, and quite frankly, this isn't a Salesforce thing, right? This is when we've been looking at this evolution from AI to generative AI to agentic AI, like that whole course. It's really been like, I can't think of another time when we've been furiously building a plane while still pedaling, like with our Barney Rubble feet, right? Like it's just this whole combination of just trying to figure out what we actually need. And I think what Salesforce is realizing is that it needs to get its data house, it needs to help its customers get their data house in order, while also getting their model house in order, while also getting their governance house in order, right? Is exactly what Rebecca said, right? Which is, how do I not only orchestrate and organize this, but then how do I organize the front door and the back door, right? So that, Salesforce, as Mark Benioff has said from the Dreamforce stage multiple times now, Salesforce does not exist in a vacuum. It is part of an ecosystem. So I think a lot of this command center is looking to try to figure out how to make sure that those workflows that are going to come into the Salesforce environment and kind of dump off a lot of additional work at the feet of agents also then connects to where it then needs to go. So I think that we're kind of building these different command centers and we're bringing in these different hall monitors, in an attempt to not let this become a little Lord of the Flies, right? Because I think because it's so easy to build an agent, a lot of people ran out and were like, I can build an agent, right? And they went and did it. But now the adults are coming into the room and saying, okay, it's awesome that you want to automate this process. Let's figure out what then needs to go in it. And quite frankly, if you should be automating this process. I think we're going to see a lot more conversations like this. And I think we're going to see a lot of other vendors in the space introducing things like command centers, light towers. We're going to have a whole weird naming convention on what these are going to be, right? Because Studio has taken hold on how you build it. Now this command center, light tower, lake house, I don't know what it's going to be called, but it's going to be called something. And it might sound cool. It might sound lame. I don't know where we're going, Charlie.
I think the other thing that's significant here is the shift toward consumption-based pricing with the flex credits pricing system that ties cost to results. So here's the thing, Liz, your point about, you build an agent, you build an agent, you build an agent. Well, all of a sudden it's like, holy moly, what's going on not only from a governance and compliance standpoint, but what's going on from a cost standpoint. But I think what this also shows is that Salesforce wasn't seeing quite the adoption, and of course they don't scream about that from the treetops, but I don't think they were seeing the adoption that they wanted to see as quickly as they wanted to see. And this stuff is expensive. And so I think this this flex agreement that lets organizations shift investments between user licenses and digital labor, allowing you to not be locked in. You can change as you want to go. And then those Agentforce user licenses, unlimited employee facing AI agent using through a per user per month pricing model. This allows you to kind of scale that digital labor. You don't have to worry as much about usage limits. And I mean, let's face it, Salesforce is not cheap. And it's always been the most expensive option around.
Shh, that's the secret, Shelly. Shh.
But I do think this is an important move, and I think it's attractive.
I was just going to say, too, to Shelly's point, I think it's an evolution of Salesforce's messaging as well. From saying, yes, everybody build an agent, right? This is super easy, to, no, we understand the complexity of what people are going to try to do, both from a cost perspective and an operational perspective. And so we're going to up-level our messaging around that as well to recognize some of the complexity that's there.
Yeah, I think I wanted to agree with all of you really and just say, that step towards maturity has to have visibility, right? There's a lot of startups coming into the space who are going to build some very interesting bots, but then what data do they have access to and how much are they costing? We're still at the stage where all these proof of concepts are dying at the stage of scale, right? And even within the Salesforce environment, you're already paying so much for a license, but moving that AI proof of concept into full deployment needs to have a very good understanding of how much it's going to cost. And until you can provide that transparency with this sort of solution, it's very hard to get buy-in from this agent is cool to this is now an agent we use in our entire business, right? And I think there's also an interesting piece here, Liz, you talked about what data this is going to ingest, but I mean, Salesforce are building these. Lots of companies have Salesforce. There is a question, for the people in the CCaaS space, how are you integrating with Agentforce? And we've seen some big announcements on that. And which lighthouse or whatever whatever word they end up using, Liz, which of them is actually going to be the one that is the governing force? Is it going to be an orchestrator that's built by a CCaaS platform? Is it going to be the big CRM? Who's bringing the agent? Who's bringing the actual, operating software that checks what the agent is doing? And someone's going to win the point solution battle, and someone's going to win the overarching management battle. And I think it's definitely a fight. It's a fight between some pretty big companies on the CRM side, and then some pretty aggressive agile development coming from the CCaaS side.
And and then you have companies that have just thrown their hat into the CRM side who are already big platforms that, dare I say, like to call themselves the platform of platforms. So you see some pretty interesting partnerships on that side with a company that rhymes with Schmervis now. I'm just saying, possibly. But, I think that there are a lot of companies in there, to your point, Finbarr, that are really understanding. I mean, you have Boomi doing some really interesting things when it comes to this type of orchestration. You have ServiceNow doing some really interesting things. And yes, you have the CCaaS platforms. And yes, you have folks like Salesforce. But I think it comes back to fundamentally something I know all 5 of us have talked about, especially all 4 of us. Charlie, sorry, you don't come to summer camp all the time. But when we all get together at Analyst Summer Camp, at whatever technology vendor has invited us to do such a thing, we all talk about the fact that CCaaS can't live in the bubble that contact center has been allowed to live in, especially as the language of vendors has kind of taken on CX and like, oh, the contact center is CX. This age of Agentforce and this age of agentic agents that can go in a multi-agent platform and can utilize A to A to connect all of these workflows together, man, those organizations are learning real fast that contact center is not CX. Contact center does not own CX. In fact, it's a cross-functional team sport, right? It's all the kids, marketing, sales, service, commerce, everybody's running roughshod. And to your point, Finbarr, and to Shelly's point, like, oh my God, I created this agent, like what Rebecca was saying, like, I did it. What happens when sales, commerce, service, contact center, and marketing all created the same agent with a different start point, utilizing the same data, but out of different repositories? Like, it has this whole concept of functional dominance because I owned a thing is going to very quickly get us into a point that gets us into a lot of data trouble. So I do think that while things like Control Tower, things like Studio, especially in the Salesforce environment, become really, really important, it also becomes really important for the folks who are listening today to really take leadership and really start to think about all of this as a strategy. And how do I then deploy Salesforce when I need it to get my strategy of making money, right? My strategy of delivering great experiences? How do I make that a reality? And is it by saying, wait a minute, hey, I'm on Genesys. Genesys has this rock solid partnership with Salesforce. Why am I not having a strategic conversation with everybody involved to say, where is this handoff? Where does this work? Because one isn't going to dominate the other because our customers don't care.
Yeah, they just want the solution that solves their problems. The other thing, Finbarr, you touched on observability. Liz, you're talking a little bit about interoperability. And I think this is another big thing here that's a part of this Salesforce equation. It supports the model context protocol. This delivers on that interoperability front with, you got plug and play capabilities. Who doesn't want that? Right? It comes with over 100 pre-built, ready-to-use actions, which helps speed time to value. Okay, you're speaking your customer's language. And then you've got the Agent Exchange Marketplace is integrated into the Agentforce platform. You can seamlessly embed agentic into operations. So I think that, and then the secure AI agent gateway, which allows users to access MCP servers from, AWS and Google Cloud and IBM and, like that interoperability, this is so imperative. And I think that's what we're seeing a shift to now, and again, to some of your points, Liz, this is not something that we can do or should do, more importantly, in a silo. It doesn't make any sense. Interoperability, co-innovation, working across partner marketplaces, networks, all that sort of thing, that's really the path forward.
Can we just say one thing about the money part of this? And I don't mean to I feel like I'm gonna be like the giant wet blanket all of a sudden on all of this. Like I love Wallet, I love the visibility, I love that, Finbarr, you said it, I thought bang on, right? Of you have to be able to see this, you have to be able to see all these costs, you have to be able to predict that. But I think yes, Shelly, to what you said of they saw this huge explosion in account growth and in account interest and excitement with the original Agentforce introduction. You saw people running to that sales floor, right, during Dreamforce to add this on. And then all of a sudden it just kind of plateaued a little bit. They didn't see kind of the scale from that. Interestingly, I also think from Wall Street, the Salesforce itself is experiencing a whole lot of pressure because of the expectation and because of the big announcement of Agentforce 1, not 1.0, as Rebecca has reminded us, but 1, because we're at 3, not 3.0. But I think that the reality here is that Salesforce is going to, they are still innovating. They still see themselves as a startup, and they still like to embrace that kind of startup, young kid, us against the world mindset. But they are the big gorilla in the room, and there are a lot of significant expectations on them, both from their customers and their base, but from the market and from Wall Street. And I think what Wall Street is seeing is, wait a minute, normally price increases give us a little bump. Where's the bump? Right. And so I think that there's going to be added pressure in a very different way on Mark and the executive team in order to look at, okay, how are we operating? Is that financial rigor that was really sparked and then took hold because of the activist investor movement of 2 years ago now, a year ago now, is that rigor still there? So that as you are trying all of these growth experiments, as you are looking at Agentforce 4.0, what are we going to announce at Dreamforce? Where are we going to get a pop there? As we're looking at that financial rigor still needs to be there, because you can't manipulate like you might be able to in the olden days of, we did a price increase, so our stock is stronger. That didn't work. They didn't see that in a significant degree. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, to Finbarr's point, of what happens with that per seat, what happens with that consumption. Where are we going with this? Because there is a spotlight on the big gorilla, of how those finances are going to wash out.
But I think we're in this really fascinating time right now, and I think the pressure is being felt on the larger companies because they're leading the market in this space. So what I've heard when I go out and talk to the service providers, I'm like, "What is happening with your channel?" They're like, "Companies still don't know what to buy with AI. We're 2 years in, but that's not a long time in the lifespan of a customer, right? In terms of your IT manager at a 500,000 person company, he's not necessarily going to keep up with the latest development every single time, and he shouldn't be expected to. So he's sitting there looking at Agentforce 1 and 3 has just come out, and he's still trying to understand exactly what that means for his business. And that's being felt the most at the industry leaders because they're expecting this uptick in sales when they bring out this new technology. But I don't think that the actual mechanisms of the channel and the end customer has caught up with the rate of change. And my own personal prediction, we'll see if it happens in a year or two, is that we're going to leapfrog a lot of this technology. Like, there's a lot of companies, especially in Central Europe, that aren't buying now. They're going to wait and see what happens in a year or two, and then maybe they'll start spending money now. And that's why we're not seeing that market uptick.
You know what I think Finbarr brings up a really important point too is that there are an awful lot of customers that are not ready for Agentforce yet that want to see what's the roadmap for sales, what's the roadmap for service, what's the roadmap for commerce, what am I getting from Slack, what am I getting from Tableau, now what am I getting from Informatica, right? So for those customers that may not be ready or for whatever reason aren't looking at Agentforce right now because of geography or because of their specific situation, what are they getting from their investment when so much of Salesforce's attention is on Agentforce right now?
And I think one other thing that's influencing this quite a lot as well is the cost. And people are looking at the cost and wondering, when's that coming down? And then you turn around and I mean, how much has the EU said they're putting into AI gigafactories in the next 3 years? Is it 70 billion euro or something to build 13 giant AI supercomputer data centers? And you're thinking, what's that going to do to the average cost of a cloud computing processing unit in Europe? And how's that going to? I mean, it's all going to trickle down, right, towards the end cost of an AI bot. So there's a lot of moving parts here that people are saying, well, it's going to get cheaper, it's going to get better.
Well, but Liz, your comment about the gorilla that Salesforce is, I mean, the reality of it is it's also an expensive gorilla. And to your point, Finbarr, I mean, everybody's focused on cost. And so when you're one of the most, if not the most expensive solution out there, of course there's a laser spotlight on you. I mean, come on. So I think that these are interesting times for sure.
Excellent. And I'll quickly move the conversation on now, although not to a much different topic, to be honest. And that is.
Hey, Charlie, we're going to talk about AI next. Watch it now. Come on.
Yeah, of course we are. And we're going to talk about specifically contact centers. We mentioned CCaaS vendors a little bit within that, but we've seen AI agent releases from NiCE, from Genesys, from Five9, from a lot of CCaaS vendors over the past few months. It does make me think, if I'm a contact center that's ready to start maybe dipping my toes within this AI agent extravaganza, let's say, what should maybe I be looking for in such an AI studio? I don't know, maybe Liz, if you want to start on that.
I'll be super honest with you. First, you have to look at what you already have and what you already do. I think that all of these studios are expected, required, it's table stakes. Can I just make this one plea to everyone? And I know I'm so sorry to have to make it on your show, Charlie. When you are writing your press release, I'm going to see if these three agree with me. When you are writing your press release, dear vendors, and you are about to say the words, "We are the first in the market," or "We're the first ever," or "We're the only provider to have an AI unique, a once in a generation AI studio." Just stop. Use the Google machine, use AI mode. I don't care what you use. Heck, call one of us. Like, this is what you like, hi. And then say, are we the first ever to introduce a place where you can actually build and orchestrate all of your AI workflows in one single location? I don't care what you call it. Don't call it a workbench and expect me to think it's something different. Like, that's the one thing I have to ask. But I do think that this move kind of goes into the direction that we were just talking about actually with Salesforce, which is you need a place to see all this stuff. The AI studios, and I will say the most attractive ones out there, okay, y'all remember the big workbench that you would go down into, and it's usually your dad went and like traced the tool that was supposed to be in the pegboard, right? Okay, right now we got no tracing on our pegboard for AI, right? We've just got a whole lot of tools on the workbench that everybody's building. And what these organizations and what these vendors are very rightly and very smartly doing is they're outlining where the hammer goes. They're outlining where the drill goes, thank God, so that we can put this stuff in a space and a place where everyone who was working on AI, so to Finbarr's point, right, earlier when we were talking about Salesforce, if you've got 5 people charged with kind of corralling AI, whether it's for workforce management, right, whether it is for service and contact center, whether it's for outbound, right, whether it's for proactive, you might have those leaders who are now being tapped rightfully to say, hey, AI is your baby. You're going to steer us and our team through this. Those leaders need a common place to collaborate with one another, but to also start to figure out how to collaborate with AI. We have to start getting into that mindset where AI isn't just the hammer. AI is literally like the hammer that's talking to us, being like, use me. Like, hey, I got stuff to tell you. So how do we start to collaborate with each other and with this workforce? I don't want to anthropomorphize it. I know that sounds terrible, but how do we start to collaborate with all of these flows and with all of this data? AI studios are becoming that place to be able to do that along with these control towers. What I will say is the AI studio, it's not going to be a matter of an AI studio that wins, right? It's going to be a matter of looking at these players who now have really robust cloud offerings, really great global localization, AI enriched solutions, a studio, and an easy way to connect to all of those other systems that exist outside of the contact center. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm choosing, like, oh, it's going to be in the battle between NiCE and Genesys, who has an AI studio. If you don't have an AI studio, you don't get to come to that party anymore. And I think that NiCE and Genesys are proving that they are going to keep pace with the larger platform players like a Salesforce, like a Microsoft, like an Amazon, even like an SAP. Like, let's go to those big company-wide platforms. These solutions are proving that they're going to play at that level. They're not going to play down in the I've got AI. They're now going to the no, I'm part of the business. And I think that's what's setting those 3 apart. When you bring up those 3 vendors, that is what is making them rise to the top of that enterprise consideration list. Also, I would say argue mid-market. Small business, listen, they're just trying to figure out how you put the A and the I together.
I think we're still pretty early days on all of this, and I just have this horrible picture in my head of a singing hammer. Thank you, Liz. But I think the next step of this has got to just be, it's not just that I trace out the hammer, but I can see how often each of those different tools is being used and how much it's costing me to use each of those tools each time, right? So I can say, you know what, as much as the hammer is singing, this time I need the screwdriver because I get the same result at 1/10 of the price, right? And it's those sort of things beyond just the workbench that's going to be necessary for the enterprise price, so people can say, I know how much I'm spending, I know how much of value I'm getting out of each tool, and I can make some decisions about where I apply which tool next.
Yeah. And I think also the whole build once, deploy anywhere capability, that functionality is super important. And then, connecting agents in back and middle office systems and automation resolution flows that kind of extend beyond, what we look at as the typical contact center's remit. I think all of that is super important. So I think that this is a smart move and exactly what customers are looking for, what they need.
I think because obviously we've all seen demos of these things and seen them at shows and stuff. But one of the things that always stood out to me with both of these, a lot of emphasis on the guardrails, a lot of emphasis on, I think Genesys are calling it guides, that very strict organization level of, you're allowed to do this. This is how it works. You're allowed to use agentic, but only to tell people what workflows to activate. You're allowed to use Gen AI, but only in this way. And applying it across how the entire organization handles its agents. Like that's crucial to me behind these AI studios. And that's, I would say, would be what would differentiate the different AI studios for me. As you say, Liz, everyone needs to have an AI studio. That's, if you're going to be building these agents across your whole business, you need to see where they are, what they're doing, copy from other teams, be smart about it. But then it's the next level of, how secure is it? How are we making sure that the company obeys guidelines? And obviously, if you do it wrong, people will be using shadow AI, shadow IT, shadow AI, whatever you want to call it, in the background. But if you do it right, you've got a nice, safe walled garden, and you can say to your employees, get creative.
No, I was just going to say quickly that the other part here that's so important, I think, is the ability to monitor that virtual agent performance, right? And so you can check on, how are we doing on the sentiment and the empathy front, and what about the intent and topic mining, and we're using AI scoring to evaluate effectiveness and look for anomalies and summarize outputs and all of that sort of thing. So the reality of it is, there's a huge leap of faith that's required to dive into the agentic swimming pool, right? And so to have these guardrails in place, but also have this observability and this monitoring capability, that's how you can go forward on this journey with some degree of trust. And there has to still be some reluctance to take this leap of faith. How can there not be reluctance, right? This is new for all of us. But I think that ability to really be able to have the observability, the monitoring capabilities, is what allows you to do this and embark upon this journey with some degree of trust. And I think that's important.
I was going to say, I know I'm talking about cost a lot. I feel like it's my refrain this time. But one of the things I heard when we were talking about this was the second and third tier analytics on the cost versus ROI that you can get from a cross organization observability. So you say, when we use agentic on this type of query for this type of customer that's worth this much to us, we get this ROI. And then if we don't turn it on for this type of customer, then we save X amount of money. And that's the level of interest you get to with these kind of AI studio cross observability platforms, to actually go into on these types of calls, great, on that type of call, no. And then suddenly you have a much better understanding of the actual ROI on each type of deployment, which gets a lot more interesting.
I think that a lot of this, though, kind of brings back and kind of shines a light back on the ugly truth of how our organizations are typically set up, and how those lines that remember, listen, guys, in 2020, we were having conversations about how CIOs didn't want to see any of this in the contact center, right? They were perfectly happy to allow this to be the domain of the COO, because they didn't want to unearth all of the security, all of the no, you keep this in a perfectly closed system that stays over there, and as long as you can send me a report on what you didn't do and all the things you didn't destroy, that's cool, right? And that was 5 years ago. That was not a long time ago. So I think that we have to really be careful here and keep beating the drum that I know we've all brought up in the past, which is, this is amazing for the contact center, right? This is, yes, that observability, that ability to see, yes, with this group of call, with this segment of customer, but that information is not solely the domain of the contact center or whoever in digital or IT who has been assigned to the contact center. Now, in this world of cross-organization, cross-functional agentic AI strategy that is intentionally being put in place, hopefully, that's the goal, right? That you are putting this in place to have business-wide impact. That type of information can't just sit on the observability platform or on the outbound reporting that only gets delivered in a PowerPoint once a month to back into the rest of the organization. This is where you do start to see those conversations around things like what ServiceNow is talking about, right? When you start to talk about, okay, what's bringing all of this in? When Boomi starts to talk about all of that cross studio understanding and data and information, it becomes wildly important. But from what I'm hearing, and I don't know if you guys are hearing the same thing, both CIOs and the contact center leaders are a little bit trepidatious about bringing these two things together. This is not a moment where everyone's super excited about chocolate and peanut butter coming together. This is a little bit more like chocolate and all that stuff I've put in the basement and never allowed anyone to touch before coming together, right? So I think it's a matter of the contact center having a moment and not seeing this as an intrusion, not seeing this as everyone's invading, not furthering our corporate don't touch my button, you can't see this data, we've got all of this under control because we know voice better than anyone. Like we're going to have to kind of lower that defense mechanism and those shields a bit, because this is the opportunity. Like AI Studio, this observability, this data, the level of understanding that Rebecca was talking about of what dollar, like what did we use more, what did we use less of, why didn't that work as well as that one was supposed to? Maybe it was because we didn't have sales data. Maybe it was because we didn't have cooperation with the CFO. Now is the time for those CX leaders, those contact center leaders, to finally say, I'm gonna be strategic and I'm getting a seat at that table. Like, this is the opening. Go forth, everyone. Don't kind of recede back into the old habits of, we're the contact center, we're special unicorns, no one understands us. Like, no. Like, now's the time. Like, this is the opening. Go.
Excellent. And maybe I'll quickly take us back from the contact center and talk a little bit about the wider customer experience too. And this, just to close, this is an interesting point around Forrester's latest research, which shows that customer experiences in the US and Canada have hit a new all-time low, I think decreasing for a fourth year in a row from the report. And it'll be just interesting to get all of your takes on whether that matches what you're all seeing in the field. I don't know, Finbarr, maybe if you want to start on this one.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we did similar research maybe a year ago in the UK that kind of just said the same thing. Like, expectations on the contact center are rising because consumer technology is getting better, and people are typing into ChatGPT and they're saying, "Why is this chatbot so terrible?" It was interesting because we were at Interactions International yesterday. I know I saw you there for sure, and one of the things that they came out on stage and said in their keynote, and they coined this new term, and we'll see what the rest of you think about it: exponential customers, exponential businesses. And they said the customers are growing at an exponential rate in terms of their expectations, because all of this technology they're getting for free, they're not even paying for, is so interactive, and it's giving them their answers straight away. And any question you want to ask is, here's a response. And then they're going into their customer service ecosystem, and the chatbot kicks them out and doesn't connect them to an agent and points them to an FAQ, and they're like, what the hell? But then exponential businesses, the demand on a business to deliver better customer service is going straight up as well. And the pressure, of course, if your competition do it before you do, and they get that star of they have amazing customer service, and you don't get that from your customers, then obviously the pressure is even higher. So they kind of, I like those two words. I mean, I hate when people use exponential incorrectly, if I'm honest. I mean, I'm British, that's one of the things I can say. But in this case, it does actually seem like we're getting an actual exponential curve. The line is just going straight up in terms of expectations on companies, expectations on customer service. So I agree completely with that statement, to be honest. I think people just expect more, and companies aren't really sure how to give it to them yet.
Well, now I'm scared to share this. Right. Now I'm scared to share this, because now that Finbarr has laid down I used the word exponential in something, and now I'm terrified that I'm not using it correctly. And Finbarr's coming.
Just try to use it like 7 times in the next.
Use it an exponential number of times.
we did a study this year around business leaders who had implemented AI, right? And very specifically, what were those expectations? And the interesting thing was, the vast majority of these C-suite business leaders in our network said their expectation for AI is that AI is going to deliver exponential growth for their organizations, right? This is their expectation. But when we asked them, what did you get and did you extract value? What they said they got was incremental change. right? So they're like, we want exponential growth, but what we got were 2 fewer contact center people. Like it was just like the disconnect there is really huge. And when we said, did you extract, like, do you feel you extracted value from your current investments? Only 4% said yes. So you start to see where that disillusionment between that gap really exists. I think what's interesting, and I agree with you, Finbarr, what's really interesting about this study to me is that we seem to think that this is new. And this is not a bash on Forrester's study. I actually think their study is super, super interesting. And I respect like what they are saying in it. But like, this is not new. This is not new. This disillusionment, this customer frustration with what they see in their lives as the capacity, the capability of what everyone should be able to do, because I did it, and I'm just an individual person and I was able to do it. So why can't you, has been around since we were sending paper mail, right? These studies saying that after one negative experience, people will ... Right, customers leave. I mean, there was a great study, and I want to say it was somewhere around 2008, and I don't know why it stuck with me for so long, but one of the top answers of what happens after a negative experience included like 22% of the respondents saying they had heart palpitations, and then 18% said they needed to throw up. Right, so you have customers who are admitting that they are having actual physical manifestation of a negative experience. So again, this is nothing new. What's new is how quickly we keep trying to stick lipstick on the pig of the Band-Aid that we're trying to put on it, right? Like it is like we are grasping at straws on how to fix that number, but we're doing it with things like NPS scores, customer sat scores, and we just use those. And I think the most important line that they had in their blog was essentially about talking about those internal metrics and those internal navel gazing mechanisms that we keep using as some type of back pat that we're finally getting out of this negative experience conundrum. We're not. We've just trained people to hit the 5 stars and move on out of the bathroom. Like we are not solving the problem. But I think this goes back to the thing that all of us have been saying this whole time together, which is when you are actually able to get that cross-functional team together, connect those workflows, and then be able to observe the results, observe what's happening, ask different questions, interrogate the data thanks to AI differently. Ask the question of why did this fail? AI now can actually pull those data points together for you. When we start to ask those hard questions, we start to get hard truths back, but we can actually start chipping away at decades-long patterns of us hiding and covering up negative experiences that we're consistently delivering to our customers, and actually start to do something about them. The mechanism isn't the technology to be able to do it. It's the human will to be able to change from the status quo. And I'll be honest, not a lot of organizations have been willing to do that.
Just to add to Liz's point, individual humans don't have a lot of technical debt that they have to deal with. Corporations do. But perhaps even more importantly here, we ask people way too much about their satisfaction today. Right? There's an oversampling problem going on, right? Because we're trying to find sort of either the self-congratulatory or self-flagellatory results that we can then share, right? What we should be looking at, and where I hope we're going is, and if we look at like what Support Logic is doing, for example, where I don't have to wait until a customer's upset to ask them if they're satisfied or not, or ask them if the resolution was good. Within the process of that interaction, I'm flagging when it may be going a little bit pear-shaped, so I can escalate, change, coach, manage in the appropriate way, however they're interacting to get to that outcome where the customer's happy. So I don't get to the point where I'm getting a negative satisfaction score or 2 stars or a sad face in the airport bathroom. I've already addressed it based on that initiation of the customer experience and what I know about that customer. So I'm not asking them to answer another survey, but instead I see what's happening in the moment and can address what I need to do to stop those heart palpitations.
Yeah. I agree. You know, I'm coming off of a week of rage-filled customer experience interactions, and you know, the thing about it is, I am having heart palpitations. At one point, I was going, agent, agent, and you know, but the problem is that, you know, like, we are all of us ordinary average consumers, but what we also bring into our customer experiences is the knowledge that we have that solutions and workflows exist to make these problems, to eliminate what I've been experiencing this week. And I'll give you one example.
Did you ask them to tell you? Did you ask them to look in the left corner and tell you what logo was at the bottom left of their agent screen? Because I have. I'm not going to lie, Shelly. I've totally done it.
I understand completely. But you know, but here's just one example. I had an experience where I ordered two things. I received one thing. I immediately wrote to the company. I emailed the company and said, "Hey, I didn't get this." No response. Email again. "Hey, I didn't get this." And I'm trying to, you know, we all got stuff going on. I can't remember what, you know, like, to keep dealing with this stuff, right? And they take it, you know, they take that for granted. I mean, they hope that I'm going to forget, right? So then I go to the website. This just happened yesterday. I try chatting. The chatbot is so awful. There is no possible way it can answer my questions. And so then I do the one thing that I hate more than anything else, that I will try so hard to avoid. And I call those suckers. And you know, and then I have to give, you know, of course, a couple of different responses. And you know, that goddamn system not only cut me off once, but I called back and got to a certain point and they hung up on me again, which comes on the heels of me reading an article earlier this week about that being a ploy that contact centers use to keep their numbers high, because, you know, well, a call dropped. I couldn't help that, you know, and it's just like, what I find myself railing about here is, give me the CEO of this damn company. Give me the chief experience officer and let them walk this journey. Because what I can promise you that is not happening is that senior leaders are not walking through these same experiences that I'm experiencing and that you're experiencing, and they think they've solved for these problems, and they have not. And some of these brands are huge. You know, my agent conversation was with Citi. You know, I mean, come on, Citi.
And I will also say, it's not just the senior leaders. I mean, okay, as a marketer, like by trade, right? We all forget. Like, you know, I will say, even marketing in the contact center, two places where I have lived as a leader, right? We get into that seat, we get in front of our environment, whatever that environment is. If you're living in CRM, if you're living in the agent canvas, if you're living in your marketing automation tool, we get in there and it is like it pries the customer and the consumer of any brand's hat off of your head. And you then sit stuck in that little like zone of, oh, my cart abandonment AI just told me that what I should do is send her 19 text messages and emails and then show up all over her social, reminding her that she had the temerity of putting something in her cart. And I need to remind her about it and then tell her about the 10 other things she needs to buy. Right, because I want to sell more, because that's my metric. If I'm the marketing manager, my metric is, you need to sell volume, you need to sell more, right? You need your emails to be better. But if I'm the contact center agent, I also have a metric. I also have a goal. And I also have taken my consumer hat off because I'm focused on that. And I have to get that human off the phone. They're awful. Dang it, Shelly, I hate you, right? Like, we forget.
So one interesting thing to chuck in here, because I was listening to AIB talk yesterday. That's Allied Irish Bank for the Americans on the call. They're the largest bank in Ireland. They have 3.5 million customers. About 2.9 million of them engage with them digitally through the app or through the website. And they said that because obviously they're deploying a lot of automation, the same way a lot of large financial institutions are. And they've said that the best thing that they've found internally is they're taking their agents off the line, people they don't think they need anymore because they're starting to automate more. Guess who they're getting to build the bots? They're not bringing in external developers. They're not bringing in external IT people. They're taking the people who have been on the front line dealing with people's problems and they're training them on bot construction because they say the only people who actually understand their customer journey without going out and hiring their customers, which is obviously a bit trickier, are the people who have to talk to them every day. And I thought that was really interesting in terms of like what a process a business could do to actually build better automated customer journeys. Maybe it's getting your ground level customer service agents who deal with the worst calls or the worst lines that you have and saying, how would you build me a bot that fixes this for the customer? See what they come up with.
And you know what my next challenge to them would be? Take that person who was on the front line of the contact center and offer that person up for a quarter to the marketing team to have them look at the marketing team's bot, and then have the person who was the ground level marketer, who is the marketing manager dealing with AI, dealing with email and content, have them be in the contact center. Right? Because what's happening is we're building these bots in isolation. Let's go back to the very first conversation we all had here, right? Which is we're building these things in isolation. And then we wonder why, because for everything that Shelly just went through with the bad experience, and I got the call dropped, and then the bot didn't do that, and then the website. So, because let's put it out there. The bot that Shelly experienced on the home page of the website is not the same back-end bot that Shelly would have experienced had she landed on the contact center or the service level page first. And then to make it all even worse, it's also not on the same system that the main social media page is on, because that is run by a different team. And then the WhatsApp experience, well, that's run by a different team. So we expect all of these digital things to come together, but we fundamentally have to remember that no customer ever in the span of time has ever turned to their friends over brunch and said, I just had the worst week because I had to deal with the worst customer experience, but I still like the brand because I really respect their email team.
100%. That's very funny. And by the way, Liz, the only time I got a response, now again, I had my "your order has been delivered" email that I responded to telling them about a problem. And then I forwarded that email again. Hey, I didn't get a response. So I have my email chain, okay, my proof if I have to dispute this, because that's how you have, as a customer, this is how you have to think about protecting yourself. I've got to have a paper trail so that when I dispute this with my credit card, which I don't want to do, but I'll do that. So then I went to the chatbot, then I went to the phone, and I was so incensed that the last thing that I did was on their website, it was click to email us. And to your point about this all being disconnected, is it was only when I sent an email through their website that I got a response. I mean, and by this time, I am never buying another thing for you. I'm standing up on stages and in front of people telling this awful story and using you as an example. Just stop it, you know? So, but we have to connect these things.
Yeah, I will spend the rest of my life telling people about my awful experience at Air France. It sticks with you. You're never going to get over it. And now we're going to take to stages, digital and live, to talk about it. There's no metric for that.
I'm feeling really sorry for these poor brands who don't realize they've annoyed a customer service analyst or a CX analyst.
I know, but I will tell you the funny opposite story. American Airlines, when they started their social listening and customer voice initiative, they actually started a program very early on that would tag people and flag people within their system, not in a customer service system or not, but like just in their social system. So in their social operation centers, very, very early on, because they realized that I had a very large executive following. I'm not anyone. I'm not Beyonce. I'm not like, how dare you not give me ice? Like, but I was literally like, I had a horrid experience in traversing an airport internationally. I was just in line and I tagged American Airlines. I was like, I can't believe that this is happening. By the time I got to the American Airlines desk, which was maybe 45 minutes, the gate agent at the custom stand for executive platinum flyers had been notified about my complaining in line. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Do we need to go? Like because they see the right, and it's super weird like when they say it, because you're like, ew. But it shows that they understand that network effect. They understand all of that. But when I dug into it with their team several years later, they said, "Oh, that actually came from one of our executives who complained about something to a brand online, and the brand never listened. They never acknowledged. They never even said anything. And that executive went back and was like, through every system, we shall tag people and we will make sure that we are replying back to folks." So, it comes back to that strategy.
Right, I better step in just because I realised the time. But I will note something to Shelly's point actually about the deliberately dropping calls. There's still a term that's used in contact centers called watermelon metrics, or tricks you play like that to make your metrics look better. Like the person that did that probably tried to make their service level look better. And I even heard of a contact center manager once to make their average handling time look better, consistently dial 1 second calls, put the phone down, put the phone down. So these things do happen, and it's a great term. But as I said, I will end the call there. But it's really great. So thanks to all of our analysts for joining me today and going through all of those topics too. But and also thanks to everybody for watching. Bye for now.